Hey guys, I'm with another entry, the iBox 8.9 inch 4K monoscreen. It's another entry into what's rapidly becoming a crowded field of what I call the mid-size printers. That's what I call the 8.9 up to 10.1 inch, the IBOX 5K. I call those all mid-size printers these days. All the 6-inch screens and 5.5 inch screens, the small printers, and anything over the 10.1, the frozen Mega 8K, which is 15 inches. And there are a couple of offerings in that size range. Those are what I call the large printers. So this one came power, connective cord. It is a branded USB, but I don't recognize the name. Qidi. Don't know what that is, but hopefully it's a real. I'll look it up later. They gave me some funnels, a COVID variant mask, some gloves, spatula, extra film, which is always good, and of course the user manual. Now, one thing I do like about this entry, first of all, there's two handles on the sides to lift it. Now, this machine is quite heavy. Just going off memory now, it feels heavier than any of my other 8.9 inch printers. Very solid, very heavy to lift. It's got one big fan in the back, well, big, normal size, I'll say, for this size printer. Power supply in the back, on-off switch in the back, USB on the side. What I do like, as you can see, it's got a lift-up lid. You guys know that rather than just a lift-off lid, I like a hinged lid that once I flip it up, I can then use both hands to manipulate the printer instead of having to look around to do that, to put the lid down. It has got, this is interesting, it's got a super solid Z, as you would expect. I mean, really heavy dual linear axis Z. It's got the that with handles, which is great. Interestingly enough, and I don't know if you can see it here, I'll tilt this without this lid. It's got two screws holding in the build plate onto the arm. The arm is super solid, very big, very thick, which makes sense on a print to the side. And then two screws locking into place. That helps you get the alignment of the build plate better. Now, one thing I don't like about it, already I can see the build plate is flat on top. It is not sloped or angled at all, which means resin is going to pool up here, and then I'm going to have to clean it, if not after every print. You know, after a couple of days, I'll want to make sure that any resin's cleaned off, so any ambient light, you know, when I open and close, all that stuff, you know, doesn't cure resin up there. So I'm not thrilled with a build plate that's not sloped at all. I don't think that's a good design feature. The vat appears to have the legs that I like, that allows you to set it down without damaging your FEP. Just set it down on a table. So let me get these screws out if I can reach here. And I can see there's slots where the vat slides into. So that you guys know I do like. I don't think this is going to come up right now. It does have little legs. That's good. It won't come up because there's styrofoam in there against the build plate, and the build plate is in a position where it's a little bit low. There's no way to maneuver this out, I don't think. Let me see if I loosen it all up. Maybe I can pop it out without turning the machine on. Oh, no, because it's gonna hit, okay. And no, can't do it, okay. So I don't think I can do that. If I pull up too hard, I might damage the FEP, don't wanna do that. But the vat does have the legs that I wanted to see. It's got the handles I wanna see, which is good. And I do like the way it attaches to the arm. So from here, what we're gonna do, and you guys know I really like the lid. I don't know, I don't see a handle in here for the lid. I guess it's just, oh, there's a little slot here so you can reach under and just kind of grab that. Okay, so I like the initial design and the look of it. Looks, you know, like I said, it's super heavy as hell and very solid. The lid itself, this lid attachment is all plastic. The rest of it's metal. This lid attachment is plastic, so it feels a little flimsier, you know, compared to the rest of the machine. But it's just a flip-up lid, so it's way better than a lift-off plastic lid, that's for sure. So I don't think, I mean, oh, it feels a little flimsy, plasticky. I don't think it's going to break or anything, so that's okay. So let me just flip these back in here. So let's now go look at the light source test, because that's an important test we need to do to check the uniformity of the light source. These days, I feel like it's one of the most important things, because we know if we see bad gridding, it's going to cause issues with the print. So let's see how this light source is, and then we'll come back and we'll look at some prints, and I'll talk about my impressions about the machine and how it works. Okay, thanks. So I did my testing for about a week, and I decided I did lots of prints. I only need to show a few, but my initial impressions are that this iBox is actually quite reliable and quite good. I can't say I'm really surprised because it's made by Qidi, which I like to call Qidi, but I reviewed one of their other printers, can't remember off the top of my head which one it was, and I liked that one. It was pretty good, and it's been good for me. I've been using it for probably about 2 to 3 months now, and it's been pretty good. So I'm not surprised that their iBox performed very reliably in my tests, actually. So what I did was I just took the same figure and I just did it, at different sizes so I could, get a feel for how it did. And the prints came out nice, details were good, and I think when you get to this size, one of the important things is reliability. And I've been printing with it. I printed the corners of the plate, I filled the plate, I did things of varying sizes. It handled everything well. I mean, the small figures come out nice. You see the high-res photos. A little bigger comes out nice, and then I did, fairly sizable. I didn't need to go huge to get a feel for how the printer really works and how reliable and accurate it is. And I have good things to say about it. Now, the one negative which I thought was coming, and I'm going to talk about now, that build plate not being sloped. Well, it doesn't take rocket science. I knew resin was going to pool up on it, and of course it did. So every print, when I took off the build plate, what I did was, and this may or may not bother people, it bothers me, how much I'm not really sure actually, but after every print I'd take the build plate, hold it over the vat, and just tilt it for like, I don't know, 10 to 12 seconds, and a lot of the resin would run off from doing that, and then I would just go through my normal cleaning process. But to me, that's a little annoying. I could also get used to it and say it's not a big deal. So that's one of those things that's going to be personal for you guys. If having a flat build plate that the resin pulls up on bothers you, then it does. If you say, Greg, you're whining about it, it's no big deal, doesn't matter to you, then it doesn't matter. But I just want to point out the build plate is perfectly flat on top, and resin just pulls up there. It just is what it is. But aside from that, the machine has been really good. Now, the other thing I should point out, I have to say, and I didn't measure exactly, but I have to say it's probably 2 to 3 inches at least, maybe like 4 inches wider footprint than, say, my Saturn, even though it has the same size build plate. So like I pointed out right after the unboxing, and by the way, my wife you saw the printer go flying, and she actually clapped. I have to give her credit for having a great attitude. And the printer went flying off the table. She clapped. Luckily, there was no damage to it at all, and it's been working great. So that was a pretty funny event. But it has a big footprint. It's not as tall as some other printers in terms of how much space it takes up, but it is wide, and it is very heavy. But again, that speaks to solid construction, hopefully, and from what I can tell, it's very solid. So, to me, the iBox, it's actually a viable competitor to the Saturn or the Mono X or the Sonic Mighty. I have to check the prices versus those right now because those things are always changing. And as I'm sitting here doing the video, I'm not exactly sure, so I'll flash pricing now. But I feel safe, again, if the flat build plate doesn't bother you, which it does bother me, but if the flat build plate doesn't really put you off, I think it's a quality machine actually. So I do think if the price and shipping to where you are or who are watching this, you want what I call these mid-sized printers, I do think it's a viable option. So I think they did, for the most part, a really good job. I know I keep banging the drum, but I still can't wrap my head around why they didn't slope the build plate at all. But again, some of you may not care about that. The other thing I should mention, I do believe it's a Qidi box, or Qidi box, if people like to say it that way. I do believe it's a locked board. So, I had to slice in Qidi box to use it. I still support these figures in lychee, or lychee as some people like to say. I did support them in lychee and then just saved as an STL and then sliced that STL in Qidi IBOX for this iBox printer. So just be aware, if you do buy this printer, you use lychee, you will have to slice, support in lychee, save it as an STL, slice it in Qidi IBOX. To me, it's an extra 30 seconds, more offensive, and we've been over this, I've been over this in other videos, Uncle Jesse's covered this as well. There's been everything on forums. A lot of people are just mad at Qidi IBOX for locking boards. I don't blame that on the manufacturer though, so I don't even think a lot of them knew it was coming, really. So, if that affects your buying decisions, then that does also, that's another thing, but I'm just reviewing the printer itself. But I did want to mention that I believe it's locked to Qidi IBOX, just in case that's a factor for people. But I do like the printer, and I like that it has the Hinge Lid. You guys know, to me, anything's better than the lid. I just pick up and then I have to look for a place to set it down. Because my workspace, I don't know about all of you guys, I don't have a lot of extra space in my workspace, and when I do take off, even though like my Side Mini 4Ks, which I love, when I pull off that plastic cover, I'm always like, oh, when am I going to stick it now where it doesn't do anything, infringe on anything else. So I do like that it has the Hinge Lid. And I'm doing a review now for the Creality Howlett Sky, and that one also has a Hinge Lid. So I like to see companies are starting to, even with plastic lids, cheaper lid, still finding a way to hinge it, at least so you don't have to, especially these bigger ones, the bigger the lid is, the more space you need to set it down, obviously. So I like the printer. I would actually, I've been using it now, I think, 2 weeks plus now, and it's been perfect. So from what I know from my 2 weeks, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend this printer to someone, again, except for that flat build plate. But it seems like a quality piece of equipment, so yeah, that's about it. You've seen pictures, you guys can judge for yourself. I think the important thing now is, price and availability and shipping costs, stuff like that. So that's it for this review. I'm working on some resin reviews, some longer resin. My Mini Factory came out with a resin, which I've been meaning to review for a while, and I've just been so busy I didn't get to it, but I'm excited to try out their resin to see how it is. They made a move to unseat Patreon. I see some creators already going over to MMF, for a Patreon type model, but on MMF and leaving Patreon. So that has nothing to do with their resin, of course, but so I'm excited to try out their resin though and see if it's any good. And then I've got some eSun PLA Pro type resin, so we'll see how that is. And the last one that I have on my table to review, these are all done. Last one I have to review, the Onyx Pro. Now this one is frozen with Loctite. Now, does Loctite know anything about making resin? I would actually think they'd be pretty good at it because they make a lot of glues that are kind of like resin where they mix two things. And Loctite, they have the chemistry. So I'm actually excited to test out frozen and Loctite to see what kind of resin they made. And I don't know who, in that collaboration, who did what, so who knows if it's a marketing gimmick or not. But I'm going to test it out, and you're going to get to see the results with me, including all the brake tests and everything. So stay tuned to my channel for the next couple of weeks. Look for these videos, and I've got more resins I'm going to be reviewing. Also, I'm going to step up my resin reviews because a lot of people have been asking, and I just haven't had time. But now I've freed up some time, and I'm going to work on a lot of resins for you guys. Try as many different resins as I can, so we can see how they perform. So that's it. Please like, please subscribe. If you back the Patreon, I have a Patreon. If you back the Patreon, that money is used to buy resins and to buy printers that don't get sent to me. It seems like some of the companies now are a little more reluctant to send to me because in some of my reviews, I've been pointing out things I don't like, and I'm not sure what companies like when I point out things I don't like. So tough, because you always get honest reviews here. But what that means is I have to buy some of the printers with my own money now, which is fine. And I do take all the money from the Patreon and use that to buy printers and resins to test for the community. So, I know that got long at the end. I apologize. Anyway, thanks and happy 3D printing.